I literally just spoke to someone who said, I have always undervalued myself, and I always don't price myself properly, or perhaps not enough. And as far as I'm aware, it's a big problem. And that was completely separate from the conversation we're having today. So what do you think about that?
It's probably one of the most common things that I see. I think especially with service-based businesses, obviously we help, we specialize with, health professionals and coaches. And there's, especially in our field, and this might relate to a lot of your listeners too, is there's this sense of, I want to help everyone. And if I price myself out of the market, I'm going to alienate a lot of people. So that's one piece of it. The answer to that question that I would often say is like, well, do you really think you're going to help everyone? Or like, do you have the capacity to help tens of millions of people? Probably not, right? So you're never going to help anyone anyways. And there's always going to be a segment of the market that's not going to be able to afford your services, or will afford your services regardless of the price. The second thing I see is that there's a sense of, I'm not worth charging this amount. And so there's a lot of kind of internal stuff that, goes into that. And for whatever reason, could be upbringing, conditioning, past experiences, et cetera. And again, in my neck of the woods with health professionals, I continually remind them that, if you can help someone reverse a problem health-wise they've been dealing with for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, how do you even put a price on that? Like, is $2,000 too much? Is $5,000 too much? Like, we all know that if we're dead, nothing else matters. So like, getting around that mindset of really understanding your worth and your value. And this spans the spectrum of any business. Like, even if you're, a hairdresser or a restaurateur or whatever it might be, it's really like associating the work you do with the joy, with the joy it brings people, or the problem, the frustration, the pressure that it resolves in their lives. And the more you have conviction over that, the easier it's going to be to sell that to the marketplace. Because the first person you have to sell is yourself. So if you don't feel you're worth it, the people you want to serve are also going to tell you it's too expensive, because they can sense energetically that there's something a little bit off. So first and foremost, you have to be fully convicted of your worth, of the value you bring to the world. And your price, whatever that is, should be reflected there. So if you feel 1,000,000% confident, I'll just use a random number like $2,000 for a service, great. If you don't feel 1,000,000% confident at 2,000, start at 1,500, start at 1,200, start wherever you feel 100% confident, and build up over time as you get more wins under your belt. And as you start recognizing that, hold on, these clients are getting great results. I'm starting to feel like I should be charging a bit more. And what you'll start to recognize is that most times when we raise our prices, there's not a tremendous amount of resistance that wasn't there before. Like, if you went from 1,000 to 1,500, that's not a significant jump. You're not going to all of a sudden deal with, most prospects saying that's too expensive. People will say it's too expensive if it's 1,000. People say it's expensive if it's 100. It's all about the perception of value that people have. And if you're solving a big enough problem that they want solved, then it's your job, really, your ability to communicate and articulate that transformation for them, so they start to recognize how meaningful that is in their life. And then obviously your solution is really like the best and ideally the only option that they have compared to everything else in the marketplace. So those are two of the most common things I see. And then the third thing is obviously comparison, right? Oh, well, so-and-so is charging this. I should also charge that because that's what they're charging. Who cares? Like, I think if you obsess about your clients, not the competition, you'll always have a winning business. And if that's not enough, remember that most businesses generally don't do very well. So if you're comparing yourself to a business without really knowing what's happening behind the curtain, you might be comparing yourself to a business that's 1 month away from going bankrupt, right? We don't know. So pricing, it's the single most important lever in your business. It's the highest impact, easiest thing to do, because you can just add a zero or change the price. Obviously, like, value should follow that, but it goes right to the bottom line. And if you have more money, you can help more people, you can employ more people, you have more breathing room in your business to impact a greater number of people. Or if you just want more profitability, like that's really where it all starts. So those are kind of like three of the typical things I see, and that I would say to someone who's feeling that way.
A lot of very good points there. one of the things which I suppose is worth asking you about is because the topic is partially about defending your prices, which makes me think that someone's going to attack them, quote unquote. So what happens if you do quote that price that you feel is justified, or maybe maybe you don't feel it's justified at that point because I don't know, you've just raised your prices and someone comes back and says, I want to pay half of what you've just quoted. And the scenarios might be, maybe you need the work. So what are your thoughts there?
When you say maybe you need the work, are we talking to the business owner who has to do the work to get up to snuff to command those prices? Or are we saying they need the work for the prospective customer or client?
We need the work from a cash flow perspective, the business owner.
Cool. Yeah. So first thing is you have to solve a problem that people are willing to pay for. So solving a bleeding neck problem as opposed to a stub toe. So let me give you an example. So we have a client who is amazing at helping people with migraine headaches. And migraines are the type of situation that sidelines people dramatically. Like you're in bed, you can't move, like you're done. That's something people want resolved yesterday. If we're talking about even weight loss, as an example, weight loss is obviously a massive market and a lot of people want to lose weight. But in my experience of having done this for now 16 years, even compared to migraines, on the scale of emotional intensity of I need to solve this now, weight loss is still below that. And that's why when we look at a problem that is a major I need to solve this now type of situation, that is how you can start commanding a premium price, because people are, I don't want to say desperate, but they're so in need of a solution. And it's not to say that we're taking advantage of that. We're offering our services because we know we can solve that problem, and it just happens to solve the problem in the best way. It's priced a certain way. So the first thing is really identifying a market that has a bleeding neck problem. So if you're dealing with, I had a call a couple months ago for our community, and one of the people on the call wasn't in the health space, but she was talking about how she had a service for college students to improve their testing ability. And I was like, okay, interesting. I said, do you have track record of them paying you money for this? And she said, yeah, I've got a couple people. And I said, that's awesome. Well, what did they pay you? And she said, $100. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, where do you want that to be? And she's like, well, I'd like that to be higher, but I don't know if they're willing to pay that. And I said, well, I kind of agree. Like, I don't know if that's a service or a solution that is like, I need to have this and I'm willing to pay a premium for that. So the first thing is really identifying what's the problem you're solving. The second piece that goes in with that is the target market is very important. If you're targeting, college students, they're not going to have the wherewithal to pay no matter what it is you charge, compared to someone who might be, in their 30s, has their professional career going, et cetera. So the wherewithal to pay is important. But going back to your question, if someone's like, well, it's too expensive, I don't want to pay that, I'd like to pay less. We have to understand that in any market with any problem, there's always going to be a spectrum of people. There's always going to be those people who are willing to stay and pay at the Four Seasons Hotel, for instance, $700 a night, 700 pounds a night. And there are those in the same market of people looking for a hotel that will pay 1/10 the price. And that's going to be the same in any market. There's people who buy, the Toyota Prius, and there's those who buy the Rolls Royce, right? People looking to get from A to B, and there's obviously different psychological factors that go into why someone would buy one or the other. So really what it comes down to as a business is you want to make the decision philosophically of like, what type of business do I want to run? Do I want to have a Four Seasons business, or do I want to have a Motel 6 business? Do I want to have a Toyota Prius type of offer, or do I want to have a Rolls Royce offer?